keeping it very clean until I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I was disgusted with what I saw. So I said, you gotta make a change.
All about fun, laugh, and get through life.
Find you have everything to gain and without having everything to lose.
Hi, and welcome to the show tonight. As you know, elections are just weeks away, and the nation is about to change or stay the same. Our topic tonight, a change is going to come. Who will lead the recovery? We had planned a debate with the Republican representative and the Democratic representative, but our Republican reps canceled on us. But we are still very pleased to have our two special guests joining us tonight. So before we introduce them, I'll welcome my co-host on, Dr. Vanessa Dudanzi. How are you?
How are you? This is interesting. We got a good one.
Oh, yes. We have two good guests tonight. Tonight we are pleased to introduce Ms. Shara Kauser. She's the New York State representative from the Board of Education. New York State Board of Elections. And we also have Assemblywoman Latrice Walker. She represents the 55th Assembly District. Ms. Walker was elected in 2014 to the New York State Assembly. She's a native of Brownsville, a licensed attorney that has made a name for herself as a strong voice and advocate from the streets of Brownsville to the Hall of Justice. So we welcome Shara and Assemblywoman Latrice Walker to the show. Hello, ladies. How you doing?
I'm great, and thanks for having me.
Good. Well, thank you so much for joining us because I know both of you are very busy. Cheryl, I wanted to start with you to ask you, could you please update us on the new changes of the voting system this year? Because we want to make sure that our ballots get in and get to the right place and on time.
Absolutely. And thank you for having the State Board of Elections come on your show to provide you with information on the upcoming general election. As you know, today is National Voter Registration Day, so it's very timely. And the general election is only 42 days away. So I am the Deputy Director of Public Information for the State Board. And I would like to go over a couple reminders for both voter registration and just to highlight the voting options that voters have ahead of the November 3rd general election. The voter registration deadline in New York State is October 9th, 2020. You can either go in person to a county or city board of elections to register to vote, or you can have an application postmarked by October 9th, as long as it's received by the board by October 14th. Or if you have a driver's license or a non-driver's ID through our DMV system, you can register to vote online. And many people, some people know if you are registered to vote and you have voted, and great. But if you're not sure, please just verify your voter registration. And you can do that either at the State Board of Elections website, or if you're located in New York City, at the New York City Board of Elections website. You simply put your name in and a couple simple pieces of information, and you can just verify that you are registered to vote. And that way you're all set. Those tools also help you. I'm sorry.
No. Continue.
Okay, thank you. On those websites, you could also see why you verify your registration, where you can vote. And that brings me to your voting options for the general election. There are three ways that you can vote. You can vote in person on November 3rd at your poll site from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's one option. You can take advantage of the early voting period, which starts 10 days ahead of Election Day and runs for 9 days. It's from October 24th through November 1st. And you can look up and where you can vote early, so that way You can pick what day you would like to, or what night or what weekend day works best for you to go vote. Also, there was an executive order issued that allows all voters to vote by absentee ballot. There are online portals, so you can request. You have to request to vote by absentee, and you would do that either through the State Board of Elections website again, or the New York City Board of Elections website if you are a city resident. And you can apply online, which is very fast because the information goes directly to the board. Or you can apply by mail, by phone, and by email. But the deadline to do so is October 27th to request your ballot. We recommend, or I recommend, that if you plan to vote by absentee ballot, make a plan and request the ballot earlier. Consider it when you receive it and mail it back, and allow 7 days for the mailing of the ballot to be received by the Board of Elections.
Shara, I wanted to ask you, what was they referencing to when they said that they was going to put ballot boxes across, different places in the city to put your a voting ballot in? Now, is that safe?
No. So that's a great question. And if you want to hand deliver your ballot, you have a lot of options to do so. The deadline to do so is November 3rd, which is General Election Day. You can either go to your Board of Elections, deliver it by 9 p.m. You can deliver it at any early voting site. So if you live in the city, any voting site in the city, you can drop it off at, or at a poll site. So you can drop it off right in the ballot box.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Are these poll sites listed online? If you want to drop off your ballot, are they available online?
Certainly, yes. If you go to either your county Board of Elections or your city Board of Elections website, that information is online where the early voting centers are. If you are a registered voter, you should have received a card in the mail telling you where the early voting sites that you can vote at, and your poll site. And coming soon on our website, when you log in to verify your voter registration, it will not only tell you your poll site, but the early voting sites that you can utilize.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Shara. That was good information. And if we need any more information from you, we're gonna definitely call you now. If
Yes,
there's a problem.
thank you so much for having us. And please pass the word on to make a plan on how you plan to vote for November 3rd. If you have any questions, please contact your Board of Elections. We're here to help you. We do have a lot of information online, but please don't hesitate to call because we would like to assist you. And thank you for your outreach. I think it's wonderful. The more people that we have a discussion with on voting options ahead of the general election, then the more people are prepared, they're registered to vote, they know where to go. And a lot of the confusion is just taken out of the process.
Yeah, yes. Well, we're going to keep doing outreach. We're going to keep talking to people. If we have to take a van and go around and pick them up, we'll do whatever we need to do to get them to the polls. So thank you so much for joining us, and take care. We'll see you next time. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And now, Miss Assemblywoman Latrice Walker, we have a lot of stuff that we want to talk to you about. We got the winners that's going to be running in November. Vice President Joe Biden with his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris. Or we're going to have President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, who will oversee repairing the economy and social devastation of the 220. Now, we know there's a lot of issues on the table that we need to talk about because every president says they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And then when they get in office, it's always something. So the first thing I want to start with you is the economy. With all of these people out of work, unemployed, how do you plan on getting these people back to work?
I running for? Am I one of the candidates?
Well, what
I'm trying to.
get him back to work.
Well, I guess the one thing that I can say, Lottie, is the fact. Well, thanks first for having me, and of course, I'm honored to be on a panel with Cheryl, who is probably one of the most learned people that I know with respect to voting and access to voting and protecting the vote, and if nothing else, education regarding the process. And I think that's where the key is really in our system. With respect to the economy, I'm sure we all have seen the level of devastation that COVID-19 has put us all under. And, the federal government is in turmoil economically. And they are, exerting, pressures, sometimes political or otherwise, on states and cities who are already under a lot of pressure in order to keep things afloat. I remember when COVID-19 first began, and I was at the NASDAQ, and I was one of the first people. Oh, I guess I closed the bell, and I remember one of the things that the folks said was, "How do you feel about closing the bell on one of the worst days in our economy in over 40 years?" And it was like, wait, what? And it was a bit of a culture shock for me, particularly because I first of all, I thought, I mean, I'm 40 years old, and so I guess in my lifetime, the economy had not been this bad, at least not known to me. And what that meant in a state when we were just about to complete a budget. And so we know that education is important in our communities. We need to fund our schools. We need to fund our communities, roads, healthcare, hospital institutions, and so many things are dependent upon the economy, and by extension, also, government just having access to capital. And those things just sort of shut down right before our eyes. And it sort of just threw everyone into a tizzy. And it required, our federal representatives to come up with ways to extend unemployment, to make unemployment more readily available to individuals who may not have had it. We were receiving maybe about, I don't know, somewhere around 1,000 emails a day just on people who were applying for unemployment, who were not gaining access or answers. They don't know what was happening. Systems were crashing with respect to how do you apply, how do you follow up. Telephone, numbers were just weren't operational anymore. But yet and still, we knew that people still had to pay rent until we were able to do something about that. People still had to be able to make ends meet. People still needed food. Food was shut down all across our communities, and people were standing on long lines all around the corner just to gain access to bread, milk, eggs, and cheese, which we think are some of the most basic needs with respect to our shopping. So when we think about the economy, of course, economists think, just maybe money, but we're talking about pocketbook issues, particularly in Black and brown communities, where people were having to make hard decisions on whether or not they were going to take care of their needs or put food on their table or even be able to have some of those resources. So we as a community just came together. Every day, particularly on Wednesdays, we have food distributions all across the community. And so it's hard for me to talk about the economy and not talk about poverty. And so I had a conversation about poverty in the context of the economy, and we are still trying to rebound from it. So where we go from here, hopefully the person with the best plan and the best strategies to get themselves elected on November 3rd will help us in terms of our rebounding from here.
Assemblywoman Latrice, do you think that the government should continue giving unemployment benefits until the pandemic is over? Because
absolutely.
that's the
As
fight
long
now.
as we're not, as long as their hiring freezes, people are still being furloughed, or layoffs are still taking place, or people being terminated from their jobs. We still have to live and we have to survive. we are, fighting crime at every level. And if we're unable to stabilize families and stabilize communities, I have no idea, what type of downturn we're going to see, inner city communities all across our state and our country, have to go through as people are, just trying to, again, do something so basic as to be able to provide a decent meal, to their families.
Um,
And don't even get me started on this whole like education debacle and homeschooling. Like, we just have so many
Oh, no,
issues
we,
that we're
no, we, no, we want to get you started on that. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back so we can get you started on that. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
awesome.
Why aren't you voting?
When you vote, you can do something about everything. At voteforyourlife.com, it's never been faster or easier to make a plan to vote.
Time is running out, but you still have the chance to use your power.
Check your registration and make sure your address on file is correct.
Find your state's deadlines, learn about local candidates, and request a ballot.
You'll be able to see where candidates stand on issues you care about.
Order a ballot request form to be mailed to you with prepaid postage,
allowing you to vote early, easily, and safely.
Make a plan to vote early by finding your nearest ballot drop-offs, in-person polling place, or local mailbox.
And this is where you rise, this is where you shine, this is where you become the greatest of all time. History in the making.
Vote for your life.
From my page.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We have a special guest tonight is Assemblywoman Latrice Walker. Before we went to break, you was getting ready to tell us about the education system. But before we get to that, I do want to touch on the Obamacare Act because of the health care that's going to take place now. We're already in jeopardy with the health care. They're trying to get rid of Obamacare. So what do you think is going to happen if they get rid of this Obamacare that was helping people who can't afford this expensive health care? Because, right now, the administration that's at hand has not come up with any other plan for
Well,
people to have health
they do
care.
have a plan, and their plan is to undo all of the advances that we have seen our previous administration participate in and really push forward. I worked for Congresswoman Yvette Clarke as we were having the conversation about the Affordable Care Act, right? And they're calling it Obamacare in order to make it about the man as opposed to being about the promise and the promise of the access to adequate health care for people who had previously been denied, health care. These are individuals who consider pregnancy to be a pre-existing condition in order to deny access to health care for pregnant mothers, right? And so if we allow us to go back to a system where access to affordable health care is not an option, we have to think about also the trickle down effect that it has on everything else. What does our health care affect in our everyday lives? We can talk about the fact that we have federally qualified healthcare facilities in so many of our economically disadvantaged communities who depend on people of color and low-income individuals being able to have access to healthcare. Someone has to foot the bill whenever it is that someone goes to the hospital. And if we're already talking about a crumbling economy and a government that is under a lot of financial constraints, we have to be cognizant of the constraint that this will have on so many of our local healthcare facilities, like BMS in our community. We have to think about the effect it's going to have on safety net hospitals like Brookdale or Interfaith Hospital. When we show up at a hospital in an emergency, you're expecting your care to be immediate, to be accurate, to be efficient, and to be available. But what happens when you don't have access to health care and no one is supporting the hospital, and then government is saying we don't have the money right now, and so when you show up, there's just not the workers aren't there, and so now you're not getting the level of care. And we thought that COVID-19 hit us at ginormous numbers, right, in Black and brown communities, and particularly in communities right here in Brooklyn. And so and then if folk are sick, they're not going to work. And so those individuals who are already working, now they'll be out of work because they just don't feel well. And or they may be forced to go to work because they don't have the health care and healthcare options in order to help them become well. And so, it always makes me think about really the devastating effect. We know that they have been trying to roll back the Affordable Care Act from day one. They are chipping at the bits on it, but we have to make sure that no matter who you are, where you are, whether you have access to healthcare or not, when the time comes for you to be able to be seen at a healthcare facility, that you have access to be able to do so. So notwithstanding whatever they have going on, we got to continue to persevere.
Okay, and similarly, Latrice Walker, to add to the fragmented economy that we have, New York, the DOJ has listed New York, as an anarchist state. How does that further impact our economic status?
Well, if we are being considered an anarchist state, then they have the ability to deny us access to critical federal funds, like fund for, of course, education, fund for our hospitals, fund for just whatever it is that we depend on. I always love to talk about this from the example of the trilogy. We as Americans, we have 3 different levels of government: the city, the state, and the federal. And resources begin coming to our state from the federal government. And so when the federal government is denying access to these critical resources, it also affects the state being able to provide those resources as well. And then ultimately the city from being able to provide, the necessary things that we need, like affordable housing. Most affordable housing contracts are HUD-based contracts, or like NYCHA. We talk about the crumbling infrastructure of NYCHA, and the people who live there have such critical repair needs. And how do those needs get met when the federal government is denying access to these resources? So it's time to stop playing politics on the back of the people who depend on government the most. Right. And if people, they're telling us we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstrap. Well, open up the access to the industries. And I'm sure that, people will be more than willing and ready to be able to be the millionaire, billionaires, and trillionaires that they love to enjoy. But until that day, the fact that people have to depend on their government leaders to show up and show out when they depend on them, it's time to stop playing this game and make sure that New York City has the funds that it needs in order to provide the critical care and critical resources that our communities need.
Now, go ahead, Vanessa.
Okay. Have New York City have reached out to the business owners? To my knowledge, about 60% of business owners will not be able to go back into business. Have they been entitled to the funding that the government had provided, like the EIDL, to sustain their businesses?
Well, many businesses have, and of course, just like most other things in government, it's not a unlimited and unfettered, pot of resources. And so there'll be sort of short timelines for once a business will be able to apply. But I do know a number of businesses who have been able to gain access to the PPP resources and the protection during COVID-19 to keep people employed. I do know that there have been other businesses who've been able to gain access to that. And really, we're fortunate to be able to have people like Senator Chuck Schumer, who's holding the line, albeit against all odds in a Republican-controlled Senate, to really be able to stand up and say, not on my watch. And, I just feel so honored that the Senate minority leader is the senator from the great state of New York, from right here in Brooklyn. The House Democratic chairman is the great Congressman Hakeem Jeffries from right here in Brooklyn. And so we have some really dynamic leaders who are holding the line to make sure that our communities, our small businesses are protected. However, we're not out of the woods yet. And so it's really going to be incumbent on each and every one of us to continue to invest in small businesses the way that, we know how. There was a point in time in our society when, not everyone was letting us into their doors and into their businesses. And we were forced in order to go, into the corner stores that were operated by people who lived and looked and lived, were Black people, Black and brown people. And so we got to get back to those basics and make sure that we are investing in the communities that never leave us, never close their doors on us. And I think that that's really what's going to be important to move forward.
Yes. Assembly woman Latrice, I want to ask this question, and I'm gonna try to ask it as nice as possible. So, because I'm not being sarcastic or anything, but this is something that has always bothered me. Like before the pandemic happened, just when we in regular times, every time something happens, the conversation always come up about the neighborhood, a low poverty neighborhood never has the health care that they need. They never have the equipment they need. They never have, stuff that they need every time something bad happens. So why is it that nothing happens in between the time when these things happen? Because we've been in other things besides the pandemic before, and we was having the same conversation about, they don't have the needs and they don't have the stuff that they need in that community or whatever. Now we're in the pandemic. We're talking about the same thing. Something's going to happen after the pandemic again. So what is going on in between that these communities can't get the necessary items, equipment, or whatever they need, just like you say, going to the doctor and everything. What is the problem there? I don't understand.
Well, let me start off by saying I will never get into the process of blaming the victim, right?
No, not the victim. I don't blame the victim. I'm saying why is it not
it
getting
is
in
time
the
to
community?
have some family conversations. And as you said, you don't play no games, you don't hold back no punches. I like to say, I'm not an industry assembly member. I'm an industry SWAT. And so right now we have till September 30th to complete our census, right? And if we go up to Albany to say we need 100 beds in our local hospitals, the language of government are numbers, or is numbers. And they look to your voting age population, how many people are registered to vote, who's from 0 to 5, who completed their census, and they go to those numbers first. It's something called the American Community Survey, in between census opportunities. And so when they go there, right now our district is somewhere around the 47th percentile. And they say, well, Latrice, you don't need 100 beds. You need 47 beds. And how can I argue with that when only 47 of us have actually completed the census to say, hey, I'm here. I live in 11233 or 11212. And so politics is not a spectator sport. It's not just about, expecting a person who gets elected to sort of swoop down with their cape and say, here I am to save the day. No, it involves each and every one of us. I am an amplifier of the voice of 125,000 people that I represent, and I do so proudly. But it's going to be incumbent on us to show up whenever the time is required. The census happens for a reason. It's to show why there's a need. If only 100 of us, we're asking for 100 books or 100 tablets, only 47 show up, we got 47 tablets for our kids trying to do remote learning. And that's basically it. 2 + 2 don't equal 22. right? And so it's a numbers game. And so of course it's still politics, right? And everything, it's a limited supply. Though it's $52 billion for New York State and trillions of dollars down in Washington, it's still a limited set of resources where everybody's trying to figure out and garner for the same level of amount of money. And so we got to get up there. We got to fight on our behalf. And so when you send me to Albany, you have to remember, you got to make phone calls to the district office to say, hey, I'm glad that the Assemblywoman introduced the automatic voter registration bill. We need to do more just like it, and we need to empower her to go further and advocate even stronger on our behalf.
Okay, Assemblyman Walker, I just hold it. We're finishing up our first show.
Oh, Lord, you told me you wanted me to go in. I'm ready to go in now. Like, we gotta get out here in these streets. We ain't got no time. November 30th around the corner.
We're coming back to finish this thing, but we got to finish back now. So I want to thank you for joining for the show today for our first half. And I want to thank Cheryl Kauser for coming on from the New York State Board of Elections. And so we want to thank everybody, for watching the show today. And we're going to continue this conversation, but for now, we'll see y'all next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Today's show is sponsored by Abu's Bakery. If you have a sweet tooth, stop by Abu's Bakery for some delicious cakes and pies.
It's Shannon.